Welcome to Innovation and Leadership. I'm Jess Larsen. I'm excited on this episode. We get to have Hooman Shahidi. He's the CEO of EVPassport. Thanks for doing this.
You bet. Thanks for having me.
So for people who don't know EVPassport, tell us about it.
Sure. EVPassport is an EV infrastructure organization. We operate in 35 states, 3 countries, and we deliver a turnkey EV charging solution to enterprise customers.
And so what does that look like in the real world? What are examples?
Yeah. So, for those of you that drive either an electric car or a plug-in hybrid, we're that entity that charges your car. When you arrive at one of our stations, we help you get energized, no pun intended. So it's the modern way for people to fuel up. And so for us, that is the focus of our business, but we have a very unique approach in the way we look at it. And, we believe that EV charging solutions need to be really discoverable. So you should be able to discover them in your cars, right? So in fact, we're discoverable in over 112 different vehicles, both plug-in hybrids and electric cars. We're also discoverable in the mapping engines, Google Maps and Apple Maps, so on and so forth. And when you arrive at one of our stations, it's a very unique experience, right? If you look at, how to make things simple in life, it's often very difficult to make things simple, but to make things complicated is pretty easy. So we focused on the simplicity and the seamless experience. And for us, we said, when you arrive at one of our stations, you just scan a QR code like you've been doing at restaurants for God knows how long. And it automatically integrates into your digital wallet, Google Pay, Apple Pay, which, by the way, 63% of our customers use their digital wallet. But if you're really old-fashioned, you love your credit card, you can put it in there and you're off to the races. Energy delivered, push notifications for all the relevant insights. But the best part is you don't have to download an app or have a fob or a membership or, short of, some guy walking around with a clipboard at one of these charging stations, asking you, when you're leaving and all this good stuff. So it's really, really easy for us. But what made us unique is we said this platform had to be integrated. And so we built the first ever open API as a part of it so that the customer journey carries long after the infrastructure so we can empower them to integrate with the rest of the enterprise. And as a result of that, it's been a wonderful reception in the market. And, like I said, we have thousands of chargers in our network now, over 450 enterprise customers. And we operate in the United States, Canada, Mexico, and, it's been a lot of fun.
No kidding. So I've seen some different numbers online for how much you guys have raised so far. What's the latest?
Yeah, in late 2023, we raised $200 million from Northleaf Capital Partners. They are amazing partners of ours, and we're lucky to have them on our cap table, and just a wonderful group to work with. So true partners in general.
Yeah. This is a question that is endlessly fascinating to investors who are raising money, to venture capitalists or fund managers who need LPs, to nonprofits who need to get money for the cause of the foundation. When you think about, I definitely want to talk more about EVs, but just since we're on the subject, when you think about rookie mistakes that you see happen when people are going for larger funding like that, what are some of the mistakes you see?
I think it really comes down to the basics, right? And start with follow-up, right? Just follow up obsessively. I think, sometimes in life, half the problem is solved by stating it really, really well. But then the other piece of the equation is, in order to be successful, you just have to show up, right? That's sort of the first step. You're there, now you can take it from there. And I think following up is the best way you can show VCs and PE firms and infrastructure funds and wherever you're raising money from that you mean it, right? That you're taking this diligence seriously, and that you're a product of discipline. Because a lot of times people don't want to invest in people who aren't disciplined in their domain and they're not obsessive about their work. It also shows passion as well. So I think that's piece one. Piece two is understand their needs, right? They're running a business as well. And so if you can make sure that what you're offering and the pitch you're making reflects their needs, and their objectives, you're going to increase your chances. So figure out who their LPs are, figure out where they got their money, figure out what matters to them and why, and it will make that entire process a little bit more smooth.
Yeah. When you think about the limits of, you know, which fund is this money coming out? When are they promising their LPs they're going to get the return back? Like, what could you possibly do to change your business to meet their needs, but without sacrificing the business? What's kind of your decision tree in like what we can adapt for an investor, what we can't adapt for an investor?
Well, you have to really understand your value set. And I think, in any business, it's really important to know what your values are. Just like as a person, you know what your values are. You have to know what your values are as a company. What matters to you? Where do you draw the red line? If, for us at EVPassport, for example, trust is a huge value. In fact, trust is the most important currency in which we operate under. And so you have to be able to trust these partners. You have to be able to say, okay, well, this value set is really, really important for me. Maybe it is something like ESG or sustainability that's really important, and those LPs need to reflect that ethos. And so you have to identify that, and you have to be honest with yourself about what matters to you. A lot of people have taken money from certain, groups where, they've sort of questioned their own values. And I get it, right? When someone is willing to potentially offer you money, but it's very different than your value set, you have to figure out what's important to you. And I think when you identify if there is an alignment of values, you're going to be, super successful. And we were very blessed that our values are in lockstep with Northleaf, right? I mean, they're wonderful partners of ours. And I encourage, everybody to potentially try to look at them for an investment because they're just really compassionate with a great value set and really do right by their portfolio organizations.
Yeah. When you think about the fundraising process and the steps leading up to a check getting written, in my view, feel free to disagree with me. It really falls into two big categories. Have something awesome and attract people to want it from you, right? Like you have to genuinely there's got to be a there, right? And then you also have to put your best foot forward and make it attractive and help them recognize what you've got and speak to them in their own language and this kind of thing. Let's start with the first half. When you thought about, hey, there's obviously tons and tons of people getting into the world of EVs and the infrastructure for EVs and all these things. It's, billions and billions of dollars kind of a world. Thinking about what you could do that could both be differentiated, but also defend that differentiation. What was that decision tree like for you to go, you know what, there's a million players, but here's how we can carve out our own moat around our castle?
Yeah, I think, in order to answer that, you should sort of take a step back because I fundamentally believe in the thesis that if you deliver great experiences at great value, you can arguably change the world, right? And so for us, that was the objective. What is this great experience that we want to deliver within the EV charging landscape? And to do it with great value and impact. And then from there, we're going to set out to change the world, right? And I think, as long as you're uncomfortable, that means you're in the right direction, right? As long as someone is saying, no, what you're doing hasn't been done before, right? That means you're probably onto something. You just need to find how to create value maximization. Because sometimes entrepreneurs or sometimes great businesses find a solution, but they haven't been able to, take that next leap into the value creation part of it, right? Could be a great solution, but if you can't scale it through economic value and drive revenue and really create an enterprise out of it, you've fallen short. And so for us, we wanted to make sure that what we did was simple, was reliable, and scalable. And as a result of it, we wanted to make sure that every day we showed up and did those right things to get us to that next step and that next step and the next step. And if you have to remember, we started the company in 2020, right? In the middle of the pandemic, when people were doing TikTok dances and perfecting their barbecue recipes, we decided to tackle the greatest infrastructure challenge ever, arguably since President Eisenhower. So for us, we leaned into the uncomfortable and really, started the company in really tough times. But then from there, we also raised capital in a moment where it was really difficult to raise capital. Interest rates were going up. There was a lot of turbulence within the economy. There was geopolitical factors. So, all those headwinds, were actually inspiration for us. But because we focus on best practices that really were centered around how does this business thrive? How does it make money? What's the business model going to do? And how does it satisfy scale and time? We were able to be successful in our pursuit.
Yeah. So when you think about that, like, what's the short version about what's different about you guys compared to competitors?
It really comes down to three things. I think the first piece that makes EVPassport unique is the platform experience. We don't look at this as we're a hardware company or an EV charging company. We look at this as we're an EV charging platform because, the hardware is, it's a commodity. There are companies out there that are just selling EV charging hardware, and it truly is just a commodity. And it's a lot like the TV. If you recall, you went to the store, you spend thousands of dollars on a great flat screen TV, and now you can get one that's comparable for a fraction of the price. I believe that EV charging hardware is following that same trajectory, which is why we focused on the platform. Hardware is a part of it, but beyond that, it's the software, it's the firmware, it's the connectivity, it's the operations, it's the insurance, it's the construction, it's delivering a turnkey solution for customers, because that's what really makes it an experience. And for us, we deliver that to our customers in a subscription model. And at delivering a turnkey solution that makes people's lives easy, I should say, is really valuable.
And I just want to confirm, when you say customers, do you mean the people charging their cars, or do you mean the big real estate investment trust that wants these installed at their buildings, or both?
It's both, because, and by the way, we describe ourselves as a business to society company, and we can, sit around and talk about that for hours and hours, but it's really our enterprise customers, I should say. It's the Fairfields of the world. It's the Brookfields of the world. It's the MJW investments of the world. It's those REITs, hotels, so on and so forth. And we go to them and deliver that turnkey solution. That's one differentiating factor. The other piece is we actually deliver ancillary income to their property because we have a revenue share. So they look at this necessary piece of infrastructure and are able to capitalize on it, which is really, really powerful. Then the third piece is the where the technology integrates with the rest of the enterprise, right? We're an infrastructure engagement platform. When you think about this particular solution, it's no longer a fad. You know that you need EV charging solutions at your asset. Well, how do you create cross-sell and upsell opportunities? Historically, that hasn't existed until we arrived, right? We leveraged our open API and we said, hey, well, if you have an app, we can integrate with that. If you want to start a charging session, at a hotel with your room number and your last name, we can do that, right? If you want to start a charging session with your Google single sign-on, you can do that, right? Or your Microsoft single sign-on, you can do that. That customer journey is really powered by our proprietary software. And that's really what makes it unique. I mean, we have a group of wonderful engineers, led by my co-founder, Aaron Fisher, and we have a rock star engineer. His name is Max, and they really do some amazing work, but they bring that vision, that customer journey to life. And so for us, that's really, one of our secret sauce. And then the other piece is we don't require apps. We don't make anyone download anything. I have 11 different charging apps on my phone and over $700 spread between them. And it's incredibly frustrating. So for us, that simplicity is really marquee. And then the reliability. We have a 99.7% uptime, right? Every 60 seconds, our entire network phones home to LA, and we're running diagnostic testing, optimal performance testing, grid management testing, dynamic load balancing testing, all powered by our machine learning algorithm to make sure that these chargers are reliable and secure at each and every moment. And that really is our obsession with customer success.
And this is just my ignorance about the space. And what are the competitors? Are they just selling a charging unit, or what's the competition out there?
Well, they're very focused on the hardware. I mean, there are equipment leasing models and things like that, but they're really not obsessive about customer success. I mean, we have a global workforce that wakes up every day focused on customer success, right? And that means that we put ourselves on the customer journey every time. I mean, there's a giant DC fast charging company, that was funded by the taxpayers, where the reliability is absolutely terrible. There are companies in the space that started out early, right? And they're early, and we're very grateful for them. But their reliability is terrible, right? I mean, half their chargers don't work a lot of times, right? They force you to download an app that sometimes doesn't even work. And there are companies that have started that are just focused on rebates and grants, but that's really not a sustainable and true measure of a business that's going to scale.
So with you kind of leading the charge and having this like all-in-one, simple, user-friendly, like as you're talking, I'm just thinking like Apple, like you open it out of the box, it just works, kind of feeling. When you think about making that defensible, because when people see your success and they're going like, oh, geez, those guys are eating our lunch, we should do that too. When you think about the ways to defend your lead, what comes to mind?
It's really, first and foremost, again, I think our customer obsession is not just a buzzword, it's true, right? I mean, we want to constantly be empowering, enabling, and supporting our customers, both the drivers and our enterprise customers. It's important to identify that. But two, I think it's building a business that's going to show people that we're going to be around, throughout the test of time. There are a lot of companies in this space that have started and now have fizzled out because, they couldn't get the traction because they were just focused on, the tactical objectives. The other piece of the equation is consistently being obsessive about how to drive engagement through this necessary piece of infrastructure. And that really comes down to the software, right? We believe that software innovation in this space is really going to be the supreme lever in long-term success. And understanding how that plays a role in not just creating integrations, but also managing the load, grid integrations, potentially talking about virtual power plants and where that plays a role. I think those are the things. And there's a great Chinese proverb. It says, "A journey of 1,000 steps begins with the first one." We want to wake up every day doing right by our customers and focused on what we do well, right? And that really has allowed us to be rewarded well with our customers and the market.
Yeah. And, you'd probably be hard pressed to find a CEO who would say, oh, no, we don't care about customer service, right? So my question is, when you think about all those lists of things, if your competitors just claimed to have them too, like, oh yeah, we've got that too. What would be patently, objectively not true of them claiming they're the same as you?
Well, I think one thing that really sticks out for me is our 60-second heartbeat. I mean, we are an industry leader in that regard, because we have that 60-second heartbeat and and everything that goes into supporting that. I mean, the second fastest, sort of quote unquote heartbeat is 15 minutes. So you can imagine the big difference there. The other piece is that we're truly open API, right? I mean, I challenge, any organization to raise their hand and say, hey, we want to integrate with you. We will send over our API documentation within minutes. And we drink our own champagne in that regard.
And so it is fascinating, this idea of especially you think about the fancy hotels, the fancy restaurants, a lot of their customers who'd be the most likely in society would be ones with the electric car. And these are places that would never want all the chemicals from a gas station on site, but they're excited to essentially get this rev share on something that's actually a benefit to the people they want to come anyways, right?
Yeah, they certainly are. But, one point to note, and I'm going to kind of respectfully object, is it's not just the fancy restaurants and the fancy hotels. I mean, the average cost of a used electric vehicle in the United States now is less than $25,000. So the diversity of the EV economy has never been greater. And everybody has now access to it. It's the the affordable demographic, the lower income demographic to the higher end. So you're able to service everything from a Chevy Bolt all the way to, the Porsche Taycan and everything else in between. In fact, I give a lot of credit to a great moment when the Ford Lightning came around, and it was this electric pickup truck that looked like a normal pickup truck. It didn't look like the crazy, futuristic wild cyber truck, that Tesla put out. It felt normal. To me, that was the car that made this moment real and won over the heartland, so to speak. And I think that was really, really exciting. And it said electric vehicles are no longer a fad. It's a real thing now.
Yeah. So when you think about, okay, we actually have something genuinely novel. Like we have something to offer. We're not just a Me Too business. Like we've got something that can probably stand up to some scrutiny of actually being great. And then on the fundraising, let's go to the other side of like, okay, now we need to get people to want it from us. Now we've got to get people to want to financially partner with us, and not just $1 million or a little $3 million round. Like we need $200 million. When you think about everything from introductions to what you actually say in the presentation to follow-ups, can you tell us a little bit of the story?
Yeah, we started the journey, like I said, in very kind of challenging economic times. The capital markets were very, very pushy, very reserved. The quote unquote traditional VC spray and pray model had started to evaporate. And, we're a business that is capital intensive, right? I mean, there is a hardware component to it, but there are strong recurring revenue lines. There's a lot of variables that go to our platform. And because of so much uncertainty coming off a pandemic and other, factors, there's a lot of people that, their risk tolerance was extremely low, or they just said, hey, we want to sit this one out. So for us, our journey was really focused on, one, showing them that this is a real business that has revenue, that has growth potential, that has real enterprise customers. But from there, it was about showing them that this was aligning with where the market was going, right? ESG objectives, but also beyond that, it was about customer feedback. One of the best things we did was actually share our customer success stories with our prospective investors and said, hey, don't take our word for it. Talk to our customers.
Like, what's an example? Can you give us the gist of one of those?
We actually had, one of my favorite examples is there's a fantastic organization that's based actually here out of Los Angeles, run by a gentleman named Mark Weinstein. They are not only a customer, but they're also on our cap table. So they invested in us early in our journey because they were so fond of our platform. And we actually had them talk to Northleaf, which was wonderful because it really completed the story, right? Because you have someone that's not only, using our platform, but they're also sharing in the upside and the investment that went with it.
And what's their business?
They're a real estate investment company. So they invest in all sorts of student housing or other properties, and they're a wonderful organization. And Mark is a terrific guy who has done so well. And more importantly, has been such a great figure for the Los Angeles community specifically.
Yeah.
But they were a wonderful customer reference. But beyond that, we really showed them that what we're doing is not also, just right by the enterprise customers, but drivers as well, right? I mean, go through the experience. And one of the things we did kind of during that funding process is I actually reached out to we had a reporter from the Chicago Sun-Times, and we took a trip from Chicago to Milwaukee and had him, go to different stations. And we got a car, we drove up together, and we went to a ChargePoint station, an EVgo station, an Electrify America station, and so on and so forth. And then we ended up at a EVPassport location in Chicago at the Millennium Park garages. And I watched them go through that. I didn't say anything, right? We wanted to sort of recreate that, Pepsi Coke challenge process. And we said to him, what'd you think after? And he got it, right? I mean, he really understood that there was a clunky experience with the others, but with our platform, it was really seamless and easy. And there was a lot of value in that. And, and that was one of the things we pointed to during, raising capital is, look at this. We took a blind chance on this particular individual, and it worked. And it worked because we believe in our platform and how easy and seamless and convenient it is.
It's like if a picture is worth 1,000 words, the experience is worth a lot more. Right?
It's worth as many pixels as you can put into it.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, let's do this. Our audience always gets back to us. They love the stories off the show. What's a story of one of the biggest wins? And then next we'll go on to a story of one of the toughest times in the business.
One of the biggest wins for us it really is the development and the launch of the largest charging hub in North America. Our team worked really hard to put this project on the map and bring it to life. So we are building the largest EV charging hub in Alpine, California. It is 426 plugs in one site. It's at the Viejas Casino. It's on tribal land. And it is a fantastic project that's going to be fully live July 4th of 2024. And it's super, super exciting. And I encourage everyone to go. It's going to be quite the spectacle. But it's about an hour east of San Diego. And it's sort of the last stop before you head out to the desert going towards Arizona or going north towards Vegas. And it's really, really remarkable. And this is a project where, you've got microgrids and you've got solar and there's a lot of variables that go into it, but it's really, really special because you have so many different customer journeys. You have people going to the casino, you have people going to the retail shops, you have people visiting and enjoying the resort and being a hotel guest. And so the diversity of the customer journeys was really, really interesting, but it was really our platform that embodied all of that allowed them to take different journeys while servicing their electric vehicles. And so for us, we're super, super proud of that project and we're super excited for it to come live. It's been, a ways in the making, but we're very, very proud of it.
That's fair. And so how long ago did you start that? Like from when to July 4th?
We won the deal in August of 2023. So our team has moved really, really quickly in bringing that project to life. And it's been no easy feat. Terry Favish, who's one of our executives here, has really done a phenomenal job of making sure that, those stereotypes of construction taking longer than it should does not come to life here by any means. And he's really done a great job and super excited to see it. I mean, 426 plugs is quite the spectacle.
In like 11 months, basically, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, that's awesome. You got to get Guinness Book of Records to come out, verify it, get you an extra little press piece.
Yeah, exactly.
Okay, tell us one of the toughest times since starting the business.
Yeah, I mean, I think it was probably late 2021, early 22. We're still kind of building our corporate muscle, and we were looking around, and the landscape was challenging, right? I mean, there was ankle biters, there's bigger competitors, and for us, we still needed capital, And what was interesting about our capital journey, by the way, is we never stopped raising capital. A lot of people, said, "Oh, we're going to do pre-seed, seed, Series A, Series B." We just had this perpetual, sort of Kaizen for raising capital strategy where we never stopped, and we felt that muscle actually helped us get to the big round that we had in last fall. And because
how much did you raise before the big round?
We had only raised, just shy of $15 million before it. So we took a quantum leap, and the reason for it is because we actually wanted to build a business and still want to build a business that has a clear pathway to profitability, right? A lot of people build companies that say, okay, well, we'll just raise more capital and raise more capital. We want to have a clear pathway to profitability and growing the business with good model economics on each project that we touch. So for us, it was that moment where we were pretty tight on money. right? And we and we were, had plenty of rejections, and it was just a tough moment, but we had a great group of existing investors that really rose to the occasion. And there's a gentleman who's on our board who's actually chairman of Digital Turbine, which is a NASDAQ company. His name is Rob Deutschman, and Rob is one of the most interesting people you'll ever meet. And the reason for me mentioning his name is because he helped really steward us in figuring out, how we can take that next step. And it was a really challenging time because at one point we only had 2 weeks of runway. And so we had to raise capital really quickly. But those are the moments that, get you excited. Those are the ones that contribute to the gray hairs. And, I have quite a few now, but it's really exciting to sort of look at that and think about where we were and, where we've come. But Rob really helped refine our institutional muscles and figure out, okay, this is how you're going to get to that next step. And we did it. We just prevailed. I think that sheer force of not wanting to fail and how it was not an option allowed us to persevere.
That's awesome. Okay, hold on. So how did you do it? What happened? What happened after the 2 weeks?
Well, so what we did is we actually were fortunate enough to go back to existing investors that had invested in us early on. And we said, hey, here's why we need this. And here's how we're going to get to that next step. But we fine-tuned a few things. We had to cut costs, quite dramatically. We had to, make really difficult decisions. We had to forego salaries, for some people. And myself and Aaron, for quite some time, we didn't actually take a salary because we were so focused on building the business. And so that being said, that allowed us to, take the next step and make it through and prevail.
That's great. I want to talk about rejection. Talk about getting plenty of rejection. I think about between I got my first sales job at 43, so it's 28 years ago, right? And no matter what I was selling, including trying to sell investments in our own, other investments or investments in our things, I too have had my share of rejections, right? So I'm interested. I'd love to compare notes. I'd love to know. I mean, logically, we know we're going to get rejections, but why would we take a meeting if we didn't think there was a possibility of a yes? So I defy anybody who says that a rejection doesn't sting a little bit when you thought there was a maybe, right? And so, for me, well, I'll go second, but I want to hear some of your thoughts of how does who take on rejections, or what do you do beforehand, or how do you have it have as little effect on your enthusiasm as possible?
Well, I think it's first, you have to accept that success is really built around the failures and the rejections. That's what's really driving. I think, I remember our tough times more than I remember the celebratory, big, giant milestone moments. And it's also important to realize that the journey of success is very lonely. It's extremely lonely. But you have to be comfortable with being rejected. You have to be comfortable with, not being loved, right? That's why, if you want to be consistently loved, go be an actor, go be an actress, go, be an influencer, or whatever, where you just need constant likes. True entrepreneurship and building a company, where you have to answer to key stakeholders is really tough. Whether you're being rejected by investors or customers, or I should say prospective customers or prospective investors, it's tough, but you have to first and foremost be okay. Know that the worst outcome is that they're going to say no. And so anything beyond that is actually good, right? If they say, okay, I'll see you at the next meeting, or I'll listen to your pitch, or I'll read your deck, or whatever it is, you've already made progress. And so it's about managing your internal expectations and knowing that against all odds, you're going to be resilient. And resiliency is really about consistency, right? If you show up, if you follow up, if you prove to them that against all odds, you're always going to be there and that you're reliable, that's how you're going to move the ball forward. And it's like anything else in professional sports. I mean, I'm originally from Boston, right? And Tom Brady is one of the greatest athletes ever. And it's not like he was a high draft pick. He just was consistently reliable. He showed up and he followed up and he perfected his practice. When you think about some of the greatest business leaders, Jamie Dimon, for example, Jamie Dimon, banking is not novel, right? I mean, he's got a ton of competitors. I mean, recently he just commented on the fact that the Capital One Discover merger potentially that's coming together, he wasn't even remotely threatened by it. He said, great, we'll compete, right? And the reason for that is because he believes in the fact that he's going to show up, he's going to be reliable, he's going to be consistent, and he's going to follow up. And if someone rejects you, that's okay. You'll find another way, or you'll have to go back and figure out how you can create better value. And I think that mindset, that muscle is going to allow you to prevail and stand the test of time.
Yeah, I totally agree. I think for myself, about, let's see, 2001. So what is that? Wow. No, 2002, because I just got there. I got a job working at a sales training company, and I was like cold calling, such an entry level job. I'm like cold calling these businesses, trying to get an appointment for our trainer to sell the actual sales, right? And they just said, here's what we're going to do. We're going to have you make a ton of calls, and we're going to have you learn your numbers. And mine was 1 for 50. I averaged one appointment for 50 calls. And he's just like, my boss was just like, okay, here's what you're going to do is, look at how fast you can make these calls. Looks like you could make about 100 a day. You can get, average 2 appointments a day. So I just want you to count your no's. You were trying to get to 98 no's as quick as possible, because as if you can get through 98 no's, that then the yeses will take care of themselves. So it's like it was just this mental game of a no being less painful. I'm trying to rack up as many no's as possible, right? And I think about that now, but another thing that was great too is I knew I had this big long list. If this person said no, it wasn't oh shoot, I've lost my only chance. I got this big long list of people to call, right? So I think about investing, we're very high percentage. We're about to start our own venture capital fund, right? And
congratulations.
Thanks. And I'm starting over like normal. I'm going through every phone number in my whole iPhone. We're gonna print out everybody I know off LinkedIn. We're gonna print out all the guests who've been on the show. Everybody's been to my dinner parties. And I'm just gonna come up with this list that's it's gonna be several thousand people, right? Well, a handful of thousands of people. And I'm just gonna order them A's are who I'm gonna call first. B's are if I ever get to the A's, and the C's are people I'm never gonna call. Oh yeah, I'm for sure not gonna pitch them, right?
Yeah.
And my A's and B's will be a good enough list that when the A's say no, because most of them will say no.
Yeah.
I don't have this anxiety of oh, now what are we gonna do? It's well, I'm just gonna go to the next one on the list, right? And I also find if I book out, I've got my next 4 meetings set up, that the sting of this one not working out isn't as bad, because
that's right.
And my mentor, who's my partner in my real estate fund, he started mentoring me 22 years ago. We started this practice of next. It's whenever one of us would call us and got rejected on something, we just say next. And that just means go to the next person on the list. And it's kind of almost a way of just washing it, and washing the disappointment out of ourselves. Okay, next. And anyways, those are a couple of things that have, because I want everybody to like me, and of course, not everybody's going to like my ideas, right?
Yeah.
Those are a couple of more of my tactical things that I feel have helped me try to retain some optimism.
It makes a huge difference. I mean, it's really around just training that your mind's muscle around what you value and what's important to you.
And then I will say too, the other thing of getting such a long list of people to call is, instead of calling and selling people things, I call and get advice. but say, hey, here's what I think I'm going to do. What
Yeah.
would you do if you're, because they want to buy my stuff, they'll tell me. And
Yeah.
lots of time they're like, oh, you should talk to this guy. Oh yeah, could you give me an intro? Sure. I'm happy to introduce you.
People
And
love
we
it.
never had this like awkward thing with my friend where I asked them to buy something they didn't want to buy. Like like when you've got a big long list, somebody's going to buy somewhere, so you don't have to get them. You can like
Right.
genuinely just go for advice. And sometimes they get good advice, sometimes they get a referral, and every once in a while they're like, yeah, you should ask me for the money, and they just volunteer. And like I get at some point, especially with colder contacts, you're not going to have multiple meetings, and you may need to just go for the ask. But
Yeah.
that's been helpful for me too, is like kind of like not being a salesman and just talk to so many smart people and let
Right.
them tell me who's interested. I don't know if you've ever done something like that.
I totally agree with that mindset. I think whenever you can serve as a trusted advisor to anybody, or vice versa, it always yields the best results because it removes the entitlement from the dynamic. And I think there's a lot of value in that for sure.
Yeah. One day when we were starting our real estate fund, this probably like 4 years ago, we had a billionaire on the show who I have just so much respect for. I read his books multiple times and stuff. After the show, I said, hey, can I get your advice? And instead of pitching him, I said, we're doing like this and this and this. And he didn't invest, but he gave me the kind of advice that our whole team went back and changed the entire business model of what we were doing. Like it was so much more valuable than getting some check. And it kind of has that nice bonus factor.
It's funny. I totally agree with you. I think, one of the reasons that our business pivoted towards what we describe as infrastructure as a service was because we heard from so many customers, I don't have the CapEx, I don't want to do this. I want a turnkey solution. I don't want to deal with this. It was their feedback that allowed us to put together this platform. And that's really, really important for us because it allowed us to say, okay, well, this is what matters to our customers. It just goes to show what you're saying, that, sometimes beyond just getting dollars in, it's really that feedback that drives the best outcomes. It's powerful. And I think that's why it's really important to have a consistent cadence with your customers, with your stakeholders, with your investors, just people in general. Good people, coming together often results in great things.
Yeah, it makes me think about that cliche, which I don't completely agree with, but I think has a point. Billionaires focus on marketing, billionaires focus on product. And when we're selling an investment, we're selling a financial product. Like we got the product that in your case, the drivers buy, and the REITs buy, and the hotels buy. But then you also have the product that the investors buy. It's a financial product, right?
Yes.
And terms and duration and all sorts of things make that a better or worse product. And it
makes a huge difference. But also acknowledging the fact that you have to get the product out there as well, right? There's some people that are just,
only designing.
Yeah, they're designing perpetually. They're pontificating and they're boiling the ocean. At some point, the chickens are going to come home to roost, and you're going to have to get this thing out there and go sell, which is really, really important as well.
Yeah, well, that's great. Well, I want to switch gears for our last section here. Being so in the weeds with what's actually going on in the EV world day to day, what do you think the rest of us don't realize is coming down the pipe, even in the short term? What are the rest of us not really clued into?
Yeah, I think one thing that is very, very important is to acknowledge is there are more electric vehicle cars and plug-in hybrids than ever before, right? And they look like real cars. And if you're not a car person, I'm a car person, like you don't even realize that they're out there. Like, I mean, if you look at, for example, the BMW i4, right? It looks just like a normal BMW 4 Series, except it's electric. And if you look at, for example, Porsche's a new Macan electric vehicle. It's going to look eerily similar to the Macan that's out there. It's not this like crazy looking thing, right? Like, and I think sometimes, because of the cultiness of Tesla, people have a certain perspective of electric vehicles, for better or worse. And I think that's sort of piece one, is just understanding that there's a lot of great, cool cars out there that reflect, the ones that you already have. And it's similar, right? It's not this crazy thing. But I think beyond that, it's realizing that the customer journey is shifting towards how to connect this necessary piece of infrastructure with the way we live, work, and play, right? I envision a world where, our platform is integrated with OpenTable, or where you're able to reserve your table at a restaurant, but also say that, okay, I want my car charged at the same time, right? So you have a lot of different, perspectives that go into a lot of their personal thoughts. But for me, I think understanding where that goes is really, really important, and understanding how customer journeys evolve. I think this industry is also acknowledging that we have to do more to prevent chaos in the future. And what I mean by chaos is rolling blackouts, impact to the grid, just general enablement as a whole, right? We have to educate this constituency. And I think that's really, really important. And it's not anything novel, right? I mean, I don't think there is anything particular in this industry that's happening. It's just about, having that visibility into how can we service our communities best. We have to look at our business in this sector kind of like McDonald's, right? Instead of saying how many burgers did we serve, how many drivers did we serve, how many tenants did we serve, how many students did we serve, how many patients did we serve? And I think it's really important to look at it in that perspective.
And when you think about electric vehicle adoption, hybrid adoption, what are some of the trends that you see that where it's like, hey, it's been like this in the past, but my guess is it's going to change like this in the near future?
Yeah, I mean, there's a lot of, Hertz just recently said, okay, we're peeling back our, push for EVs. But the reality is the car numbers, the sale of electric vehicles are there, right? And, when you think about it, this is kind of similar to, candidly, broadband and Wi-Fi. And, years ago, you probably went into a hotel or you went into a building where they didn't have Wi-Fi. And you asked for it, and some may have said yes, some may have said, yeah, we have it. And they were really excited. Those were the early adopters. But now you can't even imagine that happening. This is the same trajectory that electric vehicle charging and that infrastructure is taking flight with. And I think we're going to see similar path, but we're also seeing a more faster pace of adoption. People are adopting EVs and adopting the infrastructure tied to it more quickly than traditional Wi-Fi and broadband. One, because you are able to drive ancillary income, and two, the impact that it has on your asset you can lower your carbon emissions. In California, Washington, Oregon, and New Mexico, you're able to get what's called carbon credits through the LCFS program. So you're able to drive a lot of ancillary value to your property, to your asset, that normally didn't exist. And I think those key stakeholders are seeing how important and how critical that is.
Yeah, that makes sense. Well, this has been lots of fun. For people who want to find out more about it, where are the best places on the internet?
Yeah, I mean, obviously our website, EVPassport.com, is a great starting point. But feel free to follow me on Twitter, on LinkedIn, Hooman Shahidi. On Twitter, it's Hooman X Shahidi, and on Instagram as well. And if I can be of assistance and educate you on this space, or if you just want to come say hello and ask a question about where this is going. I'm here to help and support.
I love it. Um, well, listen, there's so many people that are excited about the EV world, and there's so many entrepreneurs trying to do their part, try and get in some way. And there's such an absolutely minuscule number of them that have raised the first 215 million that have made the progress that you had. What do you think is different about you? What have you done that maybe not everyone else has done?
Me personally, or us as a company?
No, you personally, like as a leader.
Oh, well, I'm really bad at complimenting myself. But I think honestly, it just starts with never giving up. I'm the son of immigrants, right? I mean, I watched my father, who built an unbelievably great and successful company, just never give up. And I watched my mother, support our family. I mean, we called her, she was our chief mom officer, right? Which is arguably the hardest job in the world, being a homemaker. And I think that mindset of just never giving up is really, really critical, and important. And because, like you said, like we discussed earlier, you're going to face a lot of rejection throughout this entire journey. But for me, I also, just made time for this, right? I mean, I think Elon Musk actually said being an entrepreneur is kind of like chewing glass while staring into the abyss. And it is like that. It's a lonely process because you're going to have to sacrifice a lot. So having an understanding of where you're making sacrifices is really important. And I did that. And, it candidly, it impacted certain relationships and things like that. And, but you have to realize what's important to you and where you're going. And for me, it really came down to never giving up and surrounding myself with people that supported that wanted to be a part of this mission, that were passionate about what we were doing. I'm beyond blessed to have an amazing team. We like to say we're at Ohana, and we are a family, because of that. And I think having that mindset, and at the end of the day, I guess it just comes down to this simple concept: the price of anything in life is how much life you're willing to exchange for it. So, you can say, I want this, but what are you willing to exchange for that?
Yeah, it makes sense. By the way, where did your parents come from?
So I'm of Persian descent. So,
Okay.
but they've been here for God knows how long, forever, decades and decades. And so, this is home.
And did they leave Iran before the revolution, or when did they leave?
Around that time. Yeah.
Yeah. So anybody who listens to the show know that I have so much respect for immigrants and kids of immigrants who come over and make these big businesses. I mean, I think statistically you're 4 times more likely to become a millionaire. And I'd love to know what's another lesson? You think about parents who are willing to face the unknown and change entire countries, right? These are people who can handle uncertainty, and they're willing to have a little confidence in themselves. And I have a lot of admiration for that. No wonder it produces so many entrepreneurs and so many of their children become entrepreneurs. What's another lesson that you look up to your parents for?
Well, it's funny. I'm actually in the middle of writing a book right now. It's called My Father's MBA. It's leadership and management lessons I learned from my dad. I think, but one of the ones that really sticks with me on a daily basis is just negotiation. My dad, it just, I watched him growing up, with this unbelievable knack for negotiating. And it really came down to 3 things. 1, understanding what mattered to that person early on. 2, negotiating with empathy. 3, never giving up. Just keep grinding. But when you do it with an understanding of what matters to them and doing it from a place of empathy versus aggression, some people try to negotiate and they're very aggressive and they're very abrasive. But when you do it in this calm, sullen voice where you're almost like having a friendly conversation, it's like a totally different dynamic. And watching my father do this time and time again, as a kid, I'd overhear, these conference calls or or meetings, it was just interesting to me, and it's something now that I embody as a leader, right? And around here, I've been notorious for becoming quite a good negotiator. I mean, you look at some of our contracts; they're pretty solid given what we've negotiated.
That's it. Well, what do you want to leave people with today?
I think the biggest lesson that I think your audience and leaders want to understand is, from my perspective, is we live in challenging times, and I think the job of the CEO has never been more blurry. We have to take this social stance. We have to lead great revenue numbers and great economic terms. We have to have great people and culture. It's such a diverse role, but I think we have to remember that whatever we do, we should do it with grace. And we should do it with the understanding that even if we can resolve something, that this too shall pass, right? I mean, and do it in a graceful, respectful manner. I mean, to me, sometimes we've lost sight of the fact that at the end of the day, we're all humans, right? People forget that. We have this strong sense of entitlement in culture now, and it's this or that, and I think part of the problem is social media is to blame because of that, right? Because you've got sort of fabricated intelligence that's out there, but just lead with grace. Whether it's with your customers, your prospective customers, your employees, your stakeholders, your family, your friends, just lead with grace. And I think every executive, whether you're the CEO or not, should embody that mentality. Wake up every day and lead with grace.
I think that's a mic drop. That's a great way to end. I love it. Thanks for making time to do this.
You bet. Thanks for having me. This has been really fun.
Okay, bye everyone.